The word cultivation stirs up images of dirt, plants, and gardens. If you've ever tried to grow something substantial, you know it takes hard work, consistency, and time. In the beginning years of Second Mile, this word, cultivation, was intentionally chosen over a word like discipleship because we wanted a reminder that we were not building programs, but we were getting messy in one another's lives, pulling up weeds, planting kingdom values, and prayerfully cultivating a beautiful, interconnected, wild, and wonderful garden. This core value in Second Mile has taken on different forms throughout the last 20 years. The point has been to help one another grow spiritually and look more and more like Jesus. Moxie mentors, crash groups, community groups, book studies, Bible studies, core communities, spiritual formation equip, and more recently, we've been talking about spiritual practices. But here's the thing. Along with a deep dependence on God, the key ingredient in all of these different plans has been relationships. Let's make it personal. You may think you are making a small decision to say hello to someone new on a Sunday morning, or grab coffee with someone, or even join a book group because of a specific interest you may have. From your present-day vantage point, you can't see the big impact you might have in someone's life or the impact they may have on yours. So to make this point, let's look at some interesting gardens of cultivation. Take Luke Johnson as an example. Maybe you know him or maybe you don't, but the man is connected in Second Mile. He participates in the cultivation of God's kingdom in our church by investing in others and allowing others to invest in him. Watch this. Luke has a roommate named Brian Seaman. Both have been in core groups together and have served Second Mile in various capacities. Luke volunteered in Second Mile Kids Ministry, where he met Kara DeSmid, the kids ministry director, who really likes Luke and invites him over to eat pretty often. And it just so happens that Brian, Luke's roommate, is in a core community with Kara and meets with her husband Dave, so now there is a bountiful garden connection between these roommates, a married couple, and specific Second Mile ministries. Speaking of ministries, Luke tilled the soil in kids ministry with 4th and 5th graders and got close with kids who moved up to the youth ministry this year. So what did Luke do? He decided to keep working this part of the garden and move up to youth ministry with them, and Lord willing, will stay with this group of teens throughout their high school graduation. Rich cultivation indeed. And now, Luke is connected with John Weatherford, the youth director, a bunch of teenagers, and around 15 adult volunteers, all committed to spiritual cultivation in one another and in teenagers' lives. Another interesting connection Luke has is with the Cameron family. He's worked for Stuart for years. Luke has communicated on more than one occasion that he would do anything for Stuart, but the feeling is mutual. Stuart doesn't just see Luke as an employee, but as a young man who is worth the investment. In knowing Stuart, Luke has also connected with Stuart's son and his family, Alec and Sarah, and their 4 kids. There is one more very important component to this flourishing garden: Luke's girlfriend, Katie. At the mention of her name, he lights up. But they don't just keep their relationship to themselves. In fact, they often spend time with the 4 Cameron kids together. Luke and Katie volunteer in the youth together. Luke and Katie are both loved and cared for by Kara and Dave DeSmid. And of course, they continue to spend time with Brian, and the circles continue, each garden row dependent on the other. We can draw more circles in a completely different part of Second Mile by looking at the lives of Travis and Stephanie Kuhn. Interestingly enough, Steph was part of Second Mile in the beginning years of our church. She came to Second Mile as one of our first college students, diving all in with relationships, mentoring, and Sunday gatherings. When she moved away, several leaders prayed that she would come back to Tucson one day and help us cultivate God's kingdom in our church and city. As God would have it, He answered our prayers in His due time, and in December 2021, brought Stephanie back to Tucson along with her husband Travis and 2 awesome boys. Stephanie still has friends from college who are still part of Second Mile: Loretta Alvarez, Susie Munzie, and Caleb Jackson. but surely it felt as different now as it did similar to what she knew before. So one of the first places they planted some roots was in Tim and Morgan's core community with Nate and Tia Edwards. From there, they connected with people in the group, even though they drove 40 minutes one way to be part of it. Community and cultivation often takes all sorts of sacrifices. A fun fact about Steph and Travis is that they are Formula One fans, and it just so happens that the DeSotos are also fans. The Coons and the DeSotos shared several meals together, connecting over their shared interest. But to know these families is to know they enjoyed leisure and meaningful conversation. Angela and John knew Steph when she was in college, and now they spend time together as families. It also just so happens that Travis is gifted in musical worship and plays drums on the Amplify team, which Angela leads. Through this connection, Travis cultivates relationships with the many people who lead our church in musical worship week after week. Another garden connection. Steph met Emily Bolthouse at a Moxie retreat through a session Emily taught, from which they began conversation about community. As you can imagine, driving across town for core community got to be a little too much, so the Coons found a group on their side of town. Guess how they found the group? Through Emily and Steph meeting at the women's retreat. And now they have 12 or so cultivated relationships on their side of town. Travis and Steph aren't party animals, or maybe they are, but they are deliberate garden growers, knowing small groups of friends are helpful for life and ministry, which helps them grow in narrow path kingdom living. Seemingly small decisions that have a big impact on their lives and the lives of others. In fact, a young couple recently visited Second Mile at Travis's invitation, and you never know, maybe these two new young people will be connections you cultivate in the Garden of Second Mile. The people described in these cultivated gardens could point out even more people, time, effort, discouragement, victories that all their relationships take. So ask them about it. But remember, you have these circles too. You are connected. What you cultivate matters to God, and it matters to this body of believers. God makes the whole body fit together perfectly. As each part does its own special work, it helps the other parts grow so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. May God cultivate us as we in turn seek to cultivate what He has given us through one another.